I have a few stories to share. The first story, to those who knew Mount AIRY. I'm not going to tell you which house it happened in because you might be the one that's living in that house right now. Here's a bit of a background check. It was built over an Indian gravesite. If I'm correct, you can go up to the library in downtown St. Paul and look it up. Well, my first encounter was when I was little, about 3rd grade or 4th grade. Back in those days, my parents washed their clothes. We weren't able to afford a washer and dryer during that time, so we would fold it up and place them over the rack in the place where you would put the bar soap. Anyways, my cousin and I had to go wash our feet before going to bed like every night. But this night was different. As we walked into the bathroom, I turned on the lights and there on the wall, I saw a shadow of a foot from its ankle to its toes. It was hanging over the rack of clothes that we were drying. I asked my cousin if he saw what I saw, and he said, "Yeah, what's that?" Dumb as I was, I turned on the sink and with a handful of water, I splashed the shadow. It didn't move right there and then, I just sort of touched the clothes on the rack. My cousin was getting scared at this point, and I was confused. I was going to touch the shadow, but my cousin stopped me from touching it. The two of us got scared and ran off to bed without washing our feet that night. My mom was yelling at us that we didn't wash our feet, and I told her about what happened. My mom knew because she said that she didn't hear the water running, and I explained to her the reason why we didn't wash our feet. Anyways, while we were in bed, I asked my cousin what was that thing in the bathroom. He just told me to shut up and go to sleep. The second story happened at my uncle's place when I was little. My family and I would always go and visit them. This was on a Saturday night and they went to visit and talked long into the night. My grandma and grandpa would tell my parents that it's late and that I should sleep over. I loved to sleep over at their place because it was always fun. Anyways, on this night, it was one night that I will never forget. I remember like it was yesterday. My cousin and I and my uncle were sleeping in the downstairs room. Their house is one of those 2-level split house, but not that kind of split house. You would walk in and about 30 yards or so, there's the dining room to the left, and then it would go up or down. So we were sleeping downstairs, and just to let you guys know, I used to have an ear infection. Sometimes it would be draining out yellow pus. Don't ask me how I got it, it's kind of nasty. All I know is that I was scared of water going into my ears. Because of this, now I yell at my wife every time she would pour water over the kids' heads when they take a bath. Anyways, back to the story. Well, that night I slept in the middle and my uncle was to my right and my cousin was to my left. If you look up, you can see the stairs in the dining room. We all went to sleep, and that night, for some reason, I don't know why it happened, but I woke up and I slightly sat up with my head over my uncle's body and saw a shadow of my auntie looking at us. I was like, what the heck is going on? My auntie was looking at us from the stairs. Maybe she was checking on us to see if we're alright. So I went back to sleep. Keep in mind, I stared at the shadow for a good long time and I could see the outline of her figure. It wasn't like she was floating, I could see her from head to toes, but it was a solid shadow figure. Anyways, I woke up later that night because my ear was draining, so I got out of bed and went to the bathroom to fold up some toilet paper and put it into my ear. In the back of my mind, I was wondering what was that shadow that I saw earlier. I went back to sleep and all night I had to get up and take care of my ear. That morning I told my grandma, but she's not my real grandma. You know how OGs were back in Laos, she's just considered my grandma. Anyways, I told her that Auntie was home because I saw her shadow looking at us last night. My grandma was confused and asked what the heck I was talking about. We go to church and there's no such shadow in this house. She started laughing like I was crazy or something. Later on, I found out from my uncle that slept with us saying that he had a nightmare, like he was being sat on and couldn't move. But he felt bad because I kept on moving and going up and down to the bathroom that night. However, during this whole time, he couldn't move at all. Eventually, he was able to break free, but he didn't want to say anything to us. Here's the third story. This happened to me back in 7th or 8th grade. I went to Washington Junior High School on Rice Street. I believe it was around fall, because school started around 7 or something, and I had to go out around 6 and it was still dark outside. I had told some of my friends to bike to school and they were like, yeah, let's do that. The first day, nothing happened. Then the second day, I think it was that day when I ran into someone or something out of this world. I had to go to Jackson Street and then past the Oakland Cemetery. When I got close to the cemetery, I made a left turn on that street, but I didn't want to ride on that side of the sidewalk, so I stayed on the other side across from the cemetery. Eventually, I passed the cemetery and stopped by the stop sign, then crossed the street and took that side. There were new houses that were being built not too long ago on that side of the road. Those houses are still there. Anyways, this is when I got close to Rice Street. There used to be an auto shop called Dino or something on the right side, and across from it to the left side, there's Dairy Queen there. Now the auto shop is gone, but the White House is still there. That's where I saw it. I was cruising on my bike until I got close to Rice Street. Something told me to turn my head to the right. I don't know why, but it just happened. I saw this white thing, or at first I thought it was a dog, but with those eyes I couldn't forget. It had red eyes. I thought that somebody left their dog outside, but its color was pure white, like a pair of new white socks. I told myself that, wow, that's a really white dog. And then on second thought, I saw that it was about 3 to 4 feet tall, and it looked like it had chicken feathers or something dirty on it. But those pairs of red eyes were looking back at me. If you guys have ever watched the anime called Guyver, you know how eyes are drawn. It's kind of slanted sideways, and those red eyes told me that it wasn't a dog, but it looked like a dog. It was like a couple of seconds, but it felt like 5 or 6 minutes had passed by. I kept on staring at it, and it was staring back at me. Then I turned my head back and looked back onto the road. When I got to school, I told all my friends what I saw, and they told me that I was crazy, and that there weren't any dogs like that. They didn't believe in me at all what I saw that morning, so I just brushed it off. I told them that if they didn't believe me, for them to wait for me after school, and I'll show them that dog with the pair of super red eyes. Well, all of my friends chickened out. They didn't really want to go with me. Only one of my friends wanted to see this dog. Well, he's a real one. Besides, he lives on the way there. So, after school, he walked with me because I didn't ride my bike but pushed along with my friend. When we got to the White House, I told them where I saw the dog, but there was no dog in sight. I wanted to go to knock on the house to see if they left their white dog outside last night or something, and that's when it hit me like a rock. What I saw that very morning was not a dog, but instead a banzong, a mischievous and dangerous spirit from Hmong belief. I have a big family, and I'm the oldest out of all my brothers and sisters. Now, going back to the place that I was living at, as I got older, I slept in the room downstairs. Nothing happened when I was sleeping in that room. I don't remember when this happened, but one night I got sat on, and like all the stories before, I too went through what everybody went through. Anyways, in my dream, I chased whatever it was, and the whole time, it was laughing at me. And then when I caught it, I beat it up and it would cry and change itself into one of my little brothers or sisters, and I was confused as what I was doing, beating up my own sibling. So I decided to let it go, and it laughed at me, and I would chase it all night, and when I caught it again, I would beat it up and it would do the same process, and I would and it would basically repeat as I mentioned earlier. Sorry. The final time I caught it, I was beating the ever-living crap out of it, and then it changed into one of my third oldest sisters. After that, I finally broke free. It was like 5 AM or something, and I had to get ready to go to the bus stop. I went upstairs to the bathroom and got myself ready. This is the part that got me spooked. As I was washing my face, I heard a knock on the bathroom door. I was confused as to who would be up this early in the morning beside me. So I opened the door and saw my third oldest sister staring at me, and I screamed like a little sissy. At this point, I was wondering if I was still up or asleep, and I was about to go punch her in the face. Then I said to myself, wait, I'm awake. And that's the only reason why I stopped. Dang, you were about to beat your little sister up. Maybe you just got anger issues, dude. Luckily, I didn't punch her in the face. I would have totally got my butt beat by my old man. Yeah, you would. I told her, what are you doing up this early? You know, I had a nightmare, and you were in that nightmare, and you sat on me, and I was chasing you and beating you up the whole night. So I closed the bathroom door and got myself ready for school. Whatever this thing was would come and haunt me for about 3 to 4 nights in a row. I would know when I was being sat on, and in my dreams I would chase it down and beat it up, the whole process as previously. Anyways, during that time, I liked to raise those teddy bear hamsters. I was broke and had no money, so I couldn't go buy wood chips for my hamster. My best friend also raised hamsters too, so one day we went to the backyard and started chopping down this sort of small pine tree. It was funny because when I look back at it, we could have gotten into a lot of trouble for doing that. So when we were done chopping the tree, we dragged it to his back door and started to trim the barks off. Man, okay, this is a sidetrack a little bit, but that was like the life back then. Nowadays, kids just watch iPads, like no one wants to go outside anymore. Anyways, I told my friend that I have been having this nightmare where I was being sat on and I would chase this thing all night. So I chopped about 2 to 3 feet of a long trunk branch and told him that I was going to put this branch with me when I go to sleep. Dang, he's getting ready for war. I don't know if this happened the next night, but whatever it was, came again. I dreamt that I was back in Laos for some reason, and that my dad and I had this wonderful bull that we both loved and raised. Whatever this thing was, this creature came and killed it, and I was so pissed I said that when I get my hands on this thing, I'm going to kill it once and for all, and this time I'll have no mercy. Even if it begs me or changes into one of my little siblings, I will kill this thing. During this time, that's when I remembered that I had this 2 to 3 foot long branch, and I picked it up and chased it, and when I caught it, I was beating it up and said, "When are you going to leave me alone?" And then it spoke to me and it said, "Please, please, I'll leave you alone." The creature said that it was going to leave around 4 to 5 p.m. I don't know why, oddly specific time. So now, to this day, when I'm about to get sat on, I know right away that something's about to happen, and I'm all ready. I'm ready to fight this thing. Of course, I now have some samurai swords instead of the branch, so when something's about to sit on me, in my dream, I've already went and got my samurai sword and wait for it to come. Even though I'm scared to fight this thing, I sometimes know that I'm ready for it and that it'll never truly come near me. Sometimes I also wouldn't go near it too, and if it does come near, I would tell it that I was ready to fight it, but I would wish that it would not go away and that it should not come my way. Sometimes it would test me to see how far it can come near me. Then I would unsheath my sword and be ready. Whoa! 这样容易杀. I'm not telling you guys that I'm cocky or anything like that. I do get scared sometimes because I can see how big it is or how small it is. When I know that it's the big one, I too doubt myself. What happens if I can't beat it? What's going to happen if I lose? And sometimes it would challenge me and I would back off, and sometimes it would also back off as well. Sometimes I would fight it and beat it down with my sword and my sword would be all messed up, but either it would walk away or I would walk away. Man, after reading this story, I'm just gonna start recruiting these people to go with me to Hmong New Year's. Here's a fishing story. Back in 2002 or 2003, I took one of my Hmong co-workers with me to go catch some white bass at my fishing place. We got there at around 5 in the morning, and man, even when the moon is fully up there, it's extremely dark. I have to drive through the woods to get to where I want to fish. Well, when we got there, I noticed that my timing was off. I miscalculated it because normally it takes about an hour to get there, but since there were no cars on the road, we got there faster than I planned. It was going to be about another hour before the sun started to shine, and we don't need to be out there too early. So the two of us sat in my car and just chilled at around 6 a.m., and then we got out our gears and walked to the river. When we got to the river, the place was quiet and the river was quiet. The moon was full and you could see the shoreline. The water dropped down to where you could see a good 3 to 4 feet out to the bottom. It was only me and my co-worker there, so we were just casting our line out there. About 10 to 15 minutes passed by, and then I heard a big splash right off the shore to my right side, about 50 yards. I could see that the water splash was about a good 5 feet splash, like you would throw a huge rock into the water and you could see it break into the water. The splash was right by the shore, so there was only about 2 to 3 feet of water, but the break was about 4 to 5 feet in the air. So I asked my buddy if he saw what I saw. He said, "It's just a beaver, dude, don't worry." I was trying to be cool-headed, but I knew this river and I knew that there was no beavers here. Later, that same splash came a little closer to us, So I reeled in my line and took out my Hmong knife and unsheathed it from my waist. I shined my $60 hunting Browning flashlight over there, but didn't see anything. I thought that it could be possibly a deer because this place has a lot of deers. Then the fog came in, and it got thicker and thicker to where the only light I could see was about 1 foot in front of me. Then the splash got closer and closer, and it was about 10 to 15 yards from my buddy and I. I told him that, hey, I think it's time for us to go to Walmart and buy some fishing line. So we packed up and went to my car and drove out of there. When we got out of the woods, I was like, dude, what the heck is that? The two of us drove back into town and I stayed in my car and took a short nap. When I woke up, it was already like 7 a.m. So then we drove back to the river. By now, there were more Hmong people already there. When we got there, my brother-in-law and his brothers were there, but they were packing up and going somewhere in a hurry. I was confused as to why were they leaving so soon. I know this dude loves fishing. I know this dude is not going to leave that soon. Then we saw that there were 2 more Hmong dudes fishing there. So my buddy and I went to fish with them. I casted out my line into the same spot while my buddy went to where the splashes were coming from and decided to fish there. There was this Hmong dude there that was fishing, so that's why he went over there. The Hmong dude that was over by the splash came to fish where I was because the white bass was hitting where I was at. He asked me a weird question like, did you notice anything this morning? And I was like, no, I didn't see anything, didn't hear anything at all. Liar. But then I heard him chant some strange Hmong lingo. Well, that day we were pretty lucky. We caught about 2 5-gallon buckets and called it a day. While we were on the road away from the river, my buddy was like, did you hear that OG chanting? And I said, yeah, but I don't know what he was saying. I was Hmong too, but I really don't know what he was saying, some strange words. My buddy told me that those words were only words that Hmong people use at funerals only. Those words don't get used outside unless something happens. That's when I told him that I think that's the reason why we ran into the thing that we saw this morning. So this happened either on a Friday or a Saturday, because my wife and I were getting ready to have our first kid. My wife was getting closer to her due date, and since I worked the first shift, I didn't want her to be at her house all by herself. I'm a wimp when it comes to things like this. Oh man, what are you talking about? It just means that kalau lupa nena, you just love your wife, that's good. So the two of us went to sleep at her mom's house for the whole week. Well, it didn't take long before something tried to sit on me. My wife and I slept in the living room, on the sofa. It's like one of those couches that can be broken down into a bed, a half couch or half bed kind of thingy. I slept by the wall and my wife slept on the edge because she tended to use the bathroom a lot. That night, something came and sat on me. It tried to sit on me, but I fought it off and I finally broke free. The reason how I broke free was kind of funny because I managed to physically scream out loud. And in my dream, I chased whatever it was off the bed and it ran right into my parents-in-law's room and dived under their bed. So I woke myself and said to myself, alright, I'm going to go and get this jerk from under my parents-in-law's bed because it just messed up my sleep. Then I paused and stopped because I was like, crap, what if I go running into their room and scare the crap out of them? Then what would I tell them? That they have a thing under their bed? So I just decided to leave it alone and deal with it in the morning. So I laid back down and went to sleep. My wife was already sleeping like a log, and all the commotion that I was doing, she didn't even wake up to see what was going on. When that morning came, she didn't even notice anything that was happening to me that night. So my mother-in-law woke up and I was already up. Then she asked me what happened last night, because she heard me scream and said that I was going to come and check up on them. But then she said that it might have been nothing. So I told her that something came and sat on me and I fought it all night. After that, it ran straight into their room and dived underneath their bed. I got up and I was going to come into their room and grab whatever it was from under the bed, but I stopped because I didn't want to freak them out. She got freaked out after I told her about my experience. She then told me a story of my father-in-law back in Laos, how there was this thing that would follow him around or something like that. I couldn't remember the exact details. This happened in Laos, so she was like, this is why she never sleeps on his side of the bed, because one time she did that and she felt a hairy hand touching her. Or it felt like something that was like a hairy hand. After that, she got scared. So I'm guessing that whatever that thing was what came to sit on me that night. Now, here's another story. It's kind of related to the story previously. We moved in with her parents for a short term until we could find ourselves a home. We went and looked at a lot of houses that day, and by we, I mean my wife and her mom, and we all got back and we were pretty tired. After this, my wife and I slept in the basement. My wife and her mom saw this house and wanted to go and see it, but at this time I was pretty tired and told them that I wanted to take a nap, so I went to sleep. Just right before I was about to fall asleep, I saw what looked to be a little boy. He was standing at the door, looking at me. Then he walked right up, or next to my left ear, and started to talk to me. So I talked back to him, but I don't remember a single word I said to him. It felt like somebody was really there with me. I wondered to myself, who is this little kid and how did he get in here? Then I felt this pressure, kind of like when you're about to get sat on. And then I told myself, oh crap, it looks like it's happening again. I could feel it right away that it was him, and when I opened my eyes, I sat up and looked around the room. My heart was beating so fast, but I didn't see any kids in there with me. I was alone in the basement. I could see that it was still day outside, and I could feel my hair standing up. I got out of bed and headed outside. The rest of the family were outside in the backyard chilling. There's a saying that goes like this: when you sleep, you should always sleep with your feet facing the door entrance, so your head is always looking at the door, because your spirit can see who is coming in and out of that room. Because of this, I could always sense when I was about to get sat on or if there was a spirit. I have a few stories to tell and share with you all. This one is from my own personal diary. This happened when my father-in-law passed away, and in the process his truck was sold to one of their relatives. My father-in-law came to me in a dream and he told me that he came to visit his house in his truck, but when he got there, he didn't see his truck, and he was wondering if I knew where it had gone to. I told him that, well, his truck was sold, and he said, to who? I told him that it was to one of his relatives, but I couldn't tell him who bought his truck. All I could say was the daughter's name and not the father's name. Then he kind of got mad that his truck was sold. Then I woke up to a major pain in my chest. You know how OGs are in their beliefs? I was kind of mad because it really wasn't my fault. I don't know why I woke up to major pain in my chest. I heard stories like when a close family moves on and they need something, they'll come to you into your dreams and tell you things that they want you to do or stuff that they need. I was freaking out and I was in a lot, and I mean a lot of pain because I've never experienced anything like that before. This happened at around 4 to 5 a.m. and my wife was soundly asleep. I told her that I was in a lot of pain, but as always, she just kind of thought that it was okay and just didn't really bother to check up on me. So I got out of bed and went to the living room. I was rolling on the floor like I was dying or something. At around 6 a.m. I called my mom and told her my dreams, and she told me to call my mother-in-law to ask who the relative's name is and who bought the car. So I called my mother-in-law and told her about it, and she told me the name. And then for me to do this strange ritual for me to honor my father-in-law or something like that. I told my mother-in-law that I don't get it, so while I was on the phone with my mother-in-law, she told me to repeat what she said. But right after she said all those things, the pain just disappeared. However, after some time, the pain returned and eventually I went to the ER. This is when I found out I had gallstone. And yes, after that I no longer have my gallbladder. But I just thought that it was strange. I have a few Hmong dragon stories. The first story took place a long time ago. It was a hot day, so me, my friend, and his wife went to Phelan Lake to go swimming. First of all, I can't swim. I kinda do, but if my feet aren't touching the ground, then I go belly up. So you could say that I really can't swim, period. We got into the lake, and if you've ever been to a swimming area, you see that there's a block of yellow rope. With that, you can't really swim and go beyond that rope. It's deep water over there, but that was only about up to past your waist. I'm about 5 feet 5 inches tall. So while we were playing tag and chasing one another within the yellow rope, there was a lot of people there, and also one lifeguard was on duty that day. Here's the strange part. One of my friends was it and was chasing the other friend. I saw that my friend had swam up to the yellow rope and decided to swim there. As I was swimming there, I felt this very strange feeling, and I stopped and stood up in the water and looked towards my other friend. He was looking at me as if he had seen a ghost. I mean, his eyes were as big as an owl. I ran and jumped towards him, and I asked him what happened, and he told me that while he was swimming towards the rope, he felt like somebody tried to grab his wrist and hand. Then he stood up and looked at whatever it was. He said that it was a little girl, and it was like someone or something was dragging her away from him, and the little girl tried to drag him. By this time, all my friends had swum towards us, and we told them about what happened. My friends stopped doing whatever they were doing, and we all jumped out of the water, and we went to the beach. I asked my friend who experienced this if he needed to report this to the lifeguard. He said, "Are you kidding me? They might think that I'm crazy or something." I said, "Well, what are we gonna do then? What if it was true and someone just died? At least we try to tell somebody." But he was too scared to even think about it. He said to me that it felt like a dream, that it was not true, that it can't be true. Then his wife said, "Honey, you better go and tell a lifeguard what you saw." We were still arguing. Then, out of nowhere, the lifeguard blew her whistle and demanded for everyone to get out of the water. By this time, I was freaking out and said, "Holy crap, this is really happening." The lifeguard was calling a name, but no one answered, so she had someone dial 911 and told all the grown-ups to hold hands, and they started walking back and forth in the water. This was the first time I ever saw this, and hopefully I will never get to see this again. As they were doing that, I could hear the siren of the police, ambulance, and fire trucks wailing towards the lake. I saw people diving under the water trying to help with the search. I saw the fire people pulling out their inflatable boats and gears and rowed out to the lake. We all watched this for a good long time in hopes that they would find a body or this kid to show up out of the water. After a while, I was thinking that we needed to go because I don't want to see a dead body. After we all left, after that day I never went to swimming at that lake. That lake is well known for its drowning of people. OGs have said that there's a dragon living in the water. I don't know how many of them are living there, but that's a lot of Hmong people that have drowned there. And yet, besides this, I still see a lot of Hmong people who go swimming at Lake Phelan. Anyways, every time some Hmong people drown there, OGs would look into it and say that the dragon took them. This is the second story, and till this day, I cannot find an explanation. It happened at a river. I'm not going to say the name of this river. Anyways, it was summer and the water went down, way down that people can walk into the middle of it and stand there and fish. So my friends and their big brother, they all went to the middle of the river. I was scared to do that, so I stayed by the riverbank and casted out my line. I tried to catch anything, even some carp. As I was standing there, I noticed to my right side that there was this very bright green color in the water. The size of this thing was no longer than 3 to 4 inches, and it was about 3 to 4 steps from the shore. If you were to step into the water, it would have been like a quarter of your calf. The green color was like almost green, but it looked like a fish and somewhat not. To me, it felt like it wanted me to reach my hand into the water and pick it up. Okay, so this river has dogfish. If you've ever seen one, it's kind of like a greenish mix with black. But this green blob had no head or tail. It was just sitting there or floating there. I was confused as to what I was looking at. I picked up a small rock and threw it right into the blob, but it didn't move. I picked up a small twig and threw it there too, but nothing happened. I was like, what is that thing? At this point, I was going to stick my hand into the water to try and see if I could pick it up. Then it hit me. I knew that I really shouldn't do that. I often hear stories on people fishing and drowning without making any splashes of water, like they just went poof and gone, just like that. Because of this, I scared myself out, so I didn't pay any more attention to it. About 3 to 5 minutes passed by, and my friends and their brother came back to the shore. I told my friend's older brother that I saw something strange in the water while they were gone. As I started to point where the green color was, I looked and it was gone, just like that. I mean, it could have swam off, but then I thought to myself, holy crap, did I just encounter a dragon's trick, or was I just seeing things? Even to this day, I say to myself that I was one lucky dude. What if I stuck my hands down that water that day, and in that time, when no one was around me, what if I disappeared? Here's another strange fishing story. This took place at Tea Island here in Minnesota on County 10 in Hastings. That night, a bunch of us guys wanted to go catch some big catfish. I mean, those cats were big as heck. You have to tie down your rod, otherwise it'll be gone, and since it's so dark over there, You can't tell if you got a hit or not, and you have to go check your pole, and before you know it, your pole is gone. Anyways, long story short, that night, something came to visit us. It was dark in the woods, and since we got there late, we didn't have a fire going, but only our headlights and flashlights. We did have a little fire going, but we didn't have enough wood. So all of a sudden, we heard what sounded like a baby crying or a bird crying in the woods. It started from far away from us, then it got closer and closer. I was about to pee my pants that night. A bunch of the guys were making noises, and I told them to pipe down because they were getting too rowdy. The crying was getting closer and closer to us, and it was about 30 to 40 yards to our left. Then it went back to the woods and came back. I took out my Hmong knife and was ready to do what I had to do, but I had no idea what I was thinking at the same time. I was getting ready to just pee my pants. Despite this, the group just got louder and more rowdy. I finally got mad and just told them to shut up, and they all shut up. Then I asked my friend if he heard what I was hearing, and he said that yeah, but thought that it was just a bird. I thought to myself that yeah, he's right, it's probably just a bird. Then that thing was right behind our car. Then, whatever it was, went farther and farther away from us, and that was it. I looked at my watch and it was 3 a.m., so I said to myself, a bird? Why would a bird be up this late at night? It sounded like a baby crying, and then it also sounded like a bird. My other friend started up his car and turned on the headlight, and then we went to find wood for our fire. Man, we made a huge bonfire that night, and when morning came, we all took off out of that wood. I've never been back to that place ever since. I just found out this story last week. I brought home some old photos of my cousins. The photo was taken at a zoo, and my cousins and I were riding on this plane. I was putting up these photos, but I didn't have any more room in my house to hang it. Well, actually, I do have some room, but my wife wouldn't let me do it anymore. So I brought the photos over to my parents' house. My parents saw that picture of my cousins and I on that plane, and my mom told me that a dragon had took him many years ago. I said to myself that I've heard this story before, but I forgot all about it. Anyways, when this happened, he was already a fully grown man, and the way that he drowned was weird. The family went on a picnic, and there was this lake. Everybody was having a good time just hanging out. Later, it got dark, and they decided to go home. When the family got home, they were wondering where he went because he wasn't with them. They thought that perhaps he came home with some of the other cousins. So they called up the family members and asked where he was at. Some say that they saw him in the lake with everybody else. So the family went back to the lake and looked for him, but he was nowhere to be found. They called the police, and the police went to look after him because they thought that he drowned. It was about 2 to 3 days later when his body was finally found. It was weird that a fully grown man just out of nowhere disappeared and poof, gone. No one knew where he was at that time. Everyone left him, not even knowing where he was or who he went home with. I heard that he was a college graduate too. I remember him when we were little kids and we grew up together, and then they moved far away into a new state, and I was still here in Minnesota. Man, the reality is starting to hit me now. Anyways, here's another story, this time about Coon Rapids Dam. I heard this story, so I'm kind of like a second-hand teller. My brother-in-law's brother went to the dam to fish. There were a lot of people that day, and there was these 2 Hmong dudes that were fishing close to the dam. I can't explain it to you because you have to see it for yourself. Back in the days, I used to fish in that very spot, and the rise and fall of the water was very mesmerizing. You just fell into a trance looking at it. But if you lose your footing, then that was the end of you. If you fall, then you die because under the water, it was extremely fast. Anyways, this one dude was fishing there, and somehow he fell into the water. His other friend was screaming for help, and everybody was wondering what was going on. The friend didn't think twice at that time and jumped right into the water to help his friend that went under, and they both died. Since the current was too strong, the divers couldn't go and get the 2 bodies. Anyways, my brother-in-law's brother was there at the time, but they were more down the river. They didn't really know what was happening, but they heard screaming for help. Then later found out what really happened because there was a lot of people there at the time. This was in the newspapers back then. When I heard the story, I asked him about it, but he didn't really want to talk. I could see why. After this, the park put up a 6-foot chain-link fence from where the two dudes drowned all the way back to the rocky bank. You have to be there to see it to really understand. Here's another story that I have to share. It goes like this. It's a story from a friend from another friend. They were at a park playing volleyball and the ball flew out of the court and into the stream behind them, but the stream had some tall grasses. So this dude went to retrieve the ball, and this is when strange things started to happen. Everyone saw him walking there and waited for the ball to be thrown at them or for him to come back with the ball. They waited and waited, and it seemed like he was not coming back anymore, so they went to see what was going on. But when they got there, past the tall grass, they didn't see anything, or didn't see him or any splashes or yelling for help. There was no signs. He couldn't have run off because if he did, then everyone would have seen him. But they saw the volleyball floating in the stream. Then, because of this, they called police. I don't know what really happened after this, but I think this happened at Lake Phelan. That lake is dangerous. People are like drowning there when the water is only like 2 to 4 feet. A lot of Hmong people know about this lake and that this lake is weird and has some hidden secrets. Some Hmong people say that when they go walking around that lake, they have been seeing the head of a dragon or a person standing out in the lake early in the morning, or a person coming out of the water. Anyways, back to the story, they found the body of their missing friend and nobody knew how he drowned. I just remember this story. I want to tell it before I forget. Here we go. This happened in my own house. I'm still currently living here. First of all, my wife doesn't really believe in these things. Years ago, my wife was telling me that she hears what sounded like little kids running in the hallways. She thought during that time that it was our son running around. She would call his name, and when she came out to see where he was in the other living room watching TV. So I told my wife that, oh, it's just her mind playing tricks on her. Soon, I started to hear those footsteps running throughout the house. I too yelled for my son and only found out that he was in the other room watching TV. My son was about 2 to 3 years old back then. One morning, I was taking a shower and my son was watching TV. Now I slightly closed the door, but had a gap so I could hear him if he needs anything. During that time, it was just me and him in the house. I had shampoo in my hair and was washing it off of me. I closed my eyes, and in the middle of washing my hair, the room got kind of cold. It felt like my son came into the bathroom because you could feel the air change when the door was opened. I felt that he had yanked the shower curtain while I was washing my hair. I screamed his name out loud because now the room was going to be all wet. Then I opened my eyes just to find that the shower curtain was not even touched. My hair stood straight up and I quickly rinsed myself and got out of the shower and started calling out my son's name. I went to the other room just to find that he's asleep on the floor watching TV. Then a couple of days later, my son and I were in the room watching TV. I was laying on the sofa and I heard what sounded like little feet running the hall. I called for my son and I thought that he was running to the other living room. I opened my eyes just to see that he fell asleep on the floor. So I got up and made a quick bed on the floor to put him in. Then soon I started to fall asleep on the sofa. This is when I had a very strange dream. I dreamt that I was talking to this little kid, and I went outside to get a small bowl of rice and some meat. I don't remember what meat it was. It was those things that you burn along with it. Incense, that's what it is. And then I opened my patio doors and placed the food outside and told the kid to go out there and eat the food and to not come back into the house. The kid went outside and closed the door behind him. That dream felt so real, and I was extremely scared. Then I woke up and said, dang, that was a weird dream. Because of this, I was about to do what I did in the dream and get a small bowl of rice with some meat and incense. But I was scared that if I opened the door, what if it came back inside? After that dream, I no longer heard anyone running in the hall. Strange. This happened when my husband and I were still living in an apartment where there is no backyard, only a cemented patio. Well, I had a miscarriage that day. The baby was almost 2 months when I miscarried. My mom says in our Hmong culture that we have to bury the baby in our backyard. I don't really know why, but my husband and I did what my mom and dad said. We had to do it in front of our apartment door because we didn't have a backyard. So, that night my husband and I slept in the living room because we were watching movies and happened to fall asleep there. It was around midnight when we both heard the sounds of cats crying really loudly at the front of our door. My husband woke up and looked through the little hole on the door and saw 3 cats surrounding that little burial site where we buried my baby earlier. This was scary to me at the time because it seems like they were all mourning there. They were all mourning the loss of my baby as well.